Haruto walked into the dungeon feeling far from cheerful. He had grown used to this feeling, being overlooked, despised, and always the one who supported others. But he didn't mind because he knew that one day, they would have to reconsider. He was a low-level hunter, level 29, but that didn't matter. Mana Gofer, that nickname haunted him every time he stepped into the raids. Despite having an endless capacity to produce mana, Haruto never got the chance to prove himself in major battles. People around him only saw him as a tool, nothing more. Today, he sat down exhausted after his team had just defeated the King Golem in a low-level dungeon. Fatigue made him pant, but it was nothing compared to what he endured daily, the disdain from his teammates. "Hey, you hunter. Why are you just sitting there?" Another teammate, named Tatsuya, approached and raised his voice. "What power do you have other than giving us mana? If you keep going like this, you'll never reach level 30. Haruto gave a bitter smile and waved it off. "Don't worry. Everyone has their own way to contribute." Behind those words was a secret, a skill that only he knew. He wasn't just Mana Gofer as they thought. He also possessed a special ability that no one knew about, copy and paste. While the team continued to clean up after the battle, Haruto glanced up at the sky, dreaming. A notification about a precious item appeared, Long Sword Kalisha. This legendary sword could grant its wielder extraordinary power, enough to change any hunter's fate. Although he wasn't high enough level to use it, Haruto couldn't stop thinking about it. If I could copy that sword. He thought to himself, his heart full of hope. But that wasn't easy. His copying skill could only replicate low-level items, or those he had touched. That meant the long sword Kalisha was out of his reach, until he reached level 30, something he hadn't been able to achieve after all these years. Just as he was lost in thoughts about the sword, an event occurred. A group of hunters from the future guild appeared, bringing a large and powerful monster. They had come to challenge the high-level hunters, and Haruto realized that he had no choice but to join the fight. Damn, another strong monster. Haruto felt the energy rise within him, but this time he wasn't just relying on his mana. He had copied a magic bow from a high-level hunter during a previous fight. This bow was not only strong, but also had the ability to create magical arrows. The monster Haruto faced this time was a level 80 king spider, extremely dangerous. The group was assigned the task to attack, but Haruto was the only one who couldn't directly participate in the battle. He stood observing, muttering incantations, and suddenly a notification appeared on the virtual screen. "You have successfully copied a magic bow from a high-level player." With the bow in hand, Haruto felt a new strength surge through him. "I can do this," he whispered to himself, gripping the bow tightly and starting to fire magical arrows at the king spider. These arrows not only pierced its shell, but also caused significant damage. Copying alone isn't enough. I need to do something stronger, Haruto thought, and began creating multiple copies of himself to fight alongside the king spider. The battle was intense, and Haruto continuously copied himself to deal consistent damage to the monster. Each time a copy was destroyed, a new one appeared, preventing the king spider from taking him down. The more he fought, the more Haruto felt his strength growing. He wasn't just copying mana or weapons anymore, now he could copy combat abilities from other hunters. A new feeling, full of power, spread through his body. "I can do this," Haruto silently said, his gaze now more determined than ever. When the king spider seemed ready to strike a fatal blow, Haruto was suddenly hit by a deadly attack. But just as his body was about to fade, another notification appeared. "You have died, but your copy has respawned." Haruto opened his eyes, rising from the middle of the battlefield. It felt like a powerful wave ran through him. The strength of his copy had allowed him to revive and continue the fight. "Die and revive, that's my way," Haruto smiled confidently, preparing for the next fight. After respawning, Haruto felt a change within his body. The fatigue and pain from before had vanished, replaced by boundless strength. His copy, though destroyed, left a powerful surge of energy within Haruto. The level 80 king spider was no longer as frightening. Haruto understood that to win, he needed to use new strategies. I can't just watch anymore, Haruto thought. He raised his hand, controlling the magic bow, pulling the string, and aiming at the king spider. Every magical arrow he shot not only pierced its shell, but also delivered a powerful magical attack. The king spider began to stagger, but it still had enough strength to retaliate. It can't recover, Haruto realized. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. He wouldn't just copy himself to fight, he would also copy the magic of the king spider. Haruto focused, closed his eyes, and tried to copy the abilities of the monster. A cold sensation ran through his body, as he sensed a new energy. Haruto opened his eyes, and saw that he had copied a web skill, the ability to create magical threads to entangle enemies. It's time. He took a deep breath, and shot a web at the king spider, quickly controlling it to wrap tightly around the monster's legs. The king spider was unable to move anymore, stuck to the ground. The group of hunters watched in amazement. He copied the king spider's skill. Tatsuya, one of the hunters, exclaimed in surprise. Haruto didn't stop there. He immediately copied the combat skills of another hunter in the group, and combined them with the attacks from his bow. The magical shots made it impossible for the king spider to resist, and eventually, it fell, defeated. It's over, Haruto sighed with relief, feeling like a heavy stone had been lifted from his chest. For the first time in his life, he felt proud of himself. After the battle, the group started to clean up the battlefield. Tatsuya approached Haruto, his eyes full of suspicion. How did you copy that skill? The king spider's skill isn't something a low-level hunter can copy. Haruto looked at Tatsuya with a determined gaze. Things aren't always what they seem. I have the ability to copy whatever I need. He didn't reveal the secret of his copying ability. Tatsuya only looked at him and sighed. Don't disappoint me. You could be much stronger than people think. Tatsuya patted Haruto on the back and walked away. Haruto stood there, quietly watching Tatsuya's figure. He felt a shift in his relationship with the hunters in the group. No longer just a weakling, he had begun to prove himself. After the battle, the group returned to the headquarters, but Haruto couldn't stop thinking about the long sword Kalijah. The legendary sword he had dreamed of still lay out of reach. But now, with his ability to copy and paste, was there a way for him to claim it? If I can copy it, could it help me level up quickly and get the power I need? Haruto thought, his eyes burning with determination. But copying the sword wouldn't be easy, he needed to prepare thoroughly, and more importantly, have a perfect plan. With that resolve, Haruto began gathering information about the long sword and how to acquire it. But he also realized that to achieve true power, he couldn't just rely on copying without preparation and strategy. I need to be stronger. Not just in power, but in strategy. Every step I take has to be carefully calculated. Haruto told himself, determined never to give up, no matter how hard it might be. At night, while sitting alone in his room, Haruto looked at the hourglass he had kept since he was a child. This hourglass was the heirloom his mother left him before his parents died in the monster catastrophe 15 years ago. That curse, just 5 more years. Haruto murmured, his eyes filled with worry. He could never forget what happened during that catastrophe when monsters from the dungeons broke free and ravaged the world. That event led him to become a hunter, but it also left him with an unavoidable curse. Only 5 more years. I have to be stronger. I have to find a way to stop that disaster, Haruto vowed, determined not to let the past haunt him, but to face it, using all his strength to change the future. When Haruto returned to the camp after the battle with the Wind Dragon, he felt as though he had reached an important milestone in his journey to becoming a true warrior. However, what he didn't expect was the arrival of new characters, people with whom he would have to collaborate and face the challenges ahead. Aiko, a talented warrior in the group, was the first to approach Haruto. Aiko was a girl with long chestnut-colored hair, always tied up in a high ponytail, revealing a serious face that was also quite charming. Her deep blue eyes always reflected intelligence and determination, making it impossible for anyone not to notice her when she entered a room. "You fought well, Haruto," Aiko said, her voice soft yet full of authority. "But don't forget, strength is not everything. You need to learn how to work as a team. This is not just your fight." Haruto looked at Aiko, his eyes reflecting surprise. "Work as a team?" Haruto thought to himself. "I am still used to fighting alone." Tatsuya, who was standing not far away, turned to look at Haruto with a serious expression. "Aiko is right. We won't be able to win if it's just you or me fighting. Personal strength is necessary, but unity is what will make the difference." Haruto realized that it wasn't just Tatsuya and Aiko, his group had others too, people who were indispensable to this journey. Kenji, a tall man with a muscular build, emerged from the shadows. Kenji was a strong warrior, who always led in every battle with near-invincible combat skills. "You did well, Haruto," Kenji said, his voice deep. "But don't forget, we'll face even greater challenges. Not everyone can be defeated as easily as that dragon." Kenji had a very distinctive appearance with tanned skin, messy black hair, and sharp black eyes, resembling a wild animal. Although he looked fierce and was always cold, Haruto could feel a warmth in Kenji's words. The whole group sat around a large campfire, discussing their next mission. While Tatsuya and Aiko continued to talk about strategies, Haruto sensed the tension in the air. Even though he had learned a lot from Tatsuya, Aiko and Kenji's words made him rethink how he approached battles. "This isn't just an individual fight," Aiko continued, her eyes gleaming with determination. "If you want to protect the people you love, you'll have to learn how to fight together." The group decided to embark on a new mission, the Magic Gate Challenge, a test that was said to be nearly impossible to overcome without teamwork. Haruto realized that, no matter how powerful his copying ability was, he still needed the support of his team to truly overcome the challenges ahead. While preparing to leave, Emiko, a petite yet strong girl, approached Haruto. Emiko was a young mage with the ability to control wind and water magic. Her long silver hair fluttered in the wind, and her ocean blue eyes had a calming effect when one looked into them. "I will help you learn to combine your copying abilities with magic," Emiko said, her voice as gentle as a breeze. "But you must learn to control your emotions. If you can't do that, your skills will lose their effectiveness." Haruto felt a new sense when he heard Emiko's words. He realized that he needed not only to train his physical strength, but also to learn to control his inner self in order to master his copying abilities. The group began their journey toward the Magic Gate, where the greatest challenge awaited them. Tatsuya led the way, followed by Aiko, Kenji, Emiko, and finally Haruto, who was no longer a weak hunter but a warrior in the making. As they neared the Magic Gate, a powerful wave of magic suddenly enveloped the entire area, creating a massive magical barrier. The group could not proceed unless they found a way to break through the magic wall. "This is not a personal challenge, Haruto," Tatsuya said. "This is when we need to cooperate, using all of our abilities." Haruto nodded, feeling for the first time that he was no longer fighting alone. Everyone in the group had their own unique skills and strengths, and together, they could overcome this challenge. The group of hunters stood before the Magic Gate, a large gate covered in ancient magic. A wave of energy emanated from the gate, causing the surrounding space to become hazy, as if time no longer had control here. Haruto felt a powerful pull from the gate, but at the same time, he realized that if he entered alone, he would not be able to overcome it. Tatsuya stood nearby, his eyes cold but shining with determination. "This is a challenge not just for you. Everyone in the group will have to contribute their strength." He looked at the group, then turned to Haruto. "You've learned how to use your copying ability, but now you need to combine it with what your teammates can do. We will overcome this together." Aiko stood next to him, her sharp eyes fixed on the gate. "Tatsuya is right. We're not just fighting a monster or facing a challenge. This gate will test our ability to cooperate. What do we need to do to break this gate? Haruto asked, his eyes filled with curiosity and determination. Kenji stepped forward and looked straight at the magical gate. This gate has many layers of protection. Each layer will require a different strength. We need a collaborative plan to break down each layer, he said, his voice low, always vigilant. Emiko, standing beside Kenji, gently raised her hand, creating small waves of magic from her palm, making the air buzz. I'll help with wind and water magic, creating chaos in the outer protective layer. But we'll need physical strength to break the final protective layer. Together, Haruto whispered, looking at his companions. He knew that now, the fight was not just about his own strength, but about how to combine everyone's power in the group. Tatsuya nodded, signaling for the group to get ready. Let's begin. As everyone began to act simultaneously, Emiko immediately created a wave of magic from her hand. Storm of water and wind, she shouted, and instantly, the strong wind combined with the magical water flow towards the magic gate. The first protective layer started to shake, but it was still not completely broken. This layer of protection is too strong, Aiko said, looking at the gate, her eyes shining. We need your help, Haruto. Copy Emiko's strength, and add another attack to the gate. Haruto nodded, focusing on his copy and paste skill. He closed his eyes, feeling the flow of Emiko's energy, and successfully copied her wind and water magic abilities. He took a deep breath and began to create his own windstorm and water waves, pushing hard against the gate. We need to focus on each layer, Kenji said as he swung his sword forward. With each attack from Kenji, the magical waves seemed to multiply. He did not stop attacking, using his sword to slash through the protective layers, helping increase the power of the group's attacks. The group kept going, flawlessly combining magic and physical strength. Tatsuya, with his expert combat skills, continuously assisted Aiko and Kenji, creating high-damage attacks. Keep going, just a little more. Emiko shouted. Finally, after a series of powerful attacks from all the group members, the magic gate shattered, and the final protective layer broke. The gate opened, revealing a space full of darkness and gloom, but no longer an impossible challenge. The gate was open, and the group faced a vast space. A cold wind blew through, carrying with it a sense of danger that covered the entire area. Inside, enormous monsters were moving, with their glowing red eyes peeking out from behind large rocks. We need to move carefully. Every step could lead to death, Tatsuya warned, his voice cold and serious. I'll go first, Aiko said, her eyes sharp. Let me clear the path for you. The rest of you, prepare to fight. Aiko quickly dashed into the space, like a gust of wind, creating powerful attacks against the approaching monsters. Kenji and Emiko immediately followed behind, using their strengths to support her. Haruto stopped for a moment, observing and trying to understand the group's tactics. He had learned that it wasn't just about his copying strength, but also the ability to coordinate with others to fight effectively. As the group continued to move, they realized that the challenge in the magic space was not only about fighting monsters. It was another world, where the laws of time and space were distorted. Every step they took became riskier, and every strategic decision would have a profound impact on the group's outcome. Remember, strength doesn't just come from each individual's combat ability. True strength comes from our unity, Tatsuya said, moving through an area full of traps. Haruto felt that he was learning not only about combat, but also about the important values in life, unity, trust, and the never-give-up fighting spirit. As Haruto's group stepped through the magic gate, and into a completely new world, they realized that the challenges ahead would not be easy. Upon entering this space, the group stared around in bewilderment. A strange forest appeared before them, with trees growing from floating stones, and the sky had an odd green hue, unlike anything they had ever seen. Where are we? Emiko asked, her eyes slightly worried but still calm as ever. This is the Weird Land, Tatsuya replied, his voice devoid of surprise. This place holds powerful creatures and mysteries that even veteran hunters dare not explore alone. Only strong groups can pass through here, Kenji said, his eyes scanning the unusual trees, staying alert to every movement around them. Haruto felt his heart race with excitement. This was the place he had been waiting for. Each step in this world was an opportunity to learn and grow stronger. We need to be prepared for what lies ahead, Haruto said, his gaze resolute. Don't forget why we are here. Tatsuya nodded and looked back at the group. Right. Our goal is to find a great source of power deep in this forest. But to get there, we will face unimaginable challenges. The group began to move deeper into the forest. The ground beneath them was soft and damp, each step making a small sound, but no creature attacked them immediately. The atmosphere here was different from the places they had fought before. A dark, oppressive silence enveloped everything. Suddenly, the air shifted. A strange sound echoed from afar, and the ancient trees began to move. Be careful! Kenji shouted. Something is coming. In an instant, a giant creature appeared from the darkness. An ancient forest beast, massive and covered in fur as hard as steel. Its glowing red eyes locked onto the group, as if it had been watching them for a long time. We have to deal with it. Aiko commanded, her voice cold but determined. Kenji charged forward, drawing his sword and began battling the creature. His powerful strikes echoed through the forest, but the ancient forest beast was not easily defeated. The beast used its sharp claws to strike at Kenji, but he stood firm, showing his resilience. Aiko, Emiko, help Kenji. Tatsuya ordered, his eyes never leaving the creature. Aiko quickly swung her magical sword, creating a powerful gust of wind to attack the beast. Magic wind, she shouted, and the wind, driven by her sword, struck the ancient forest beast. Emiko was equally powerful, casting a strong magical water wave at the creature, making it stagger. The water slightly restrained the beast, but it was not enough to defeat it. Haruto. Tatsuya called to him, his voice growing serious. Use your copying ability to combine with our powers. Haruto nodded, took a deep breath, and focused entirely on copy and paste. In an instant, he copied Aiko's wind magic and Emiko's water magic, combining them into a powerful attack. He created a fierce wave of wind and water that slammed into the ancient forest beast. The wave enveloped the beast, knocking it to the ground. The ancient forest beast roared in anger, but could not rise again. Finally, the creature was defeated. We did it. Aiko sighed in relief, smiling lightly. Kenji, still standing strong, looked at Haruto. You did well, but don't think this is the end. Haruto nodded, knowing the challenges were just beginning. There's still much to learn, he said, his eyes shining brightly. We still have a long way to go. The group continued their journey through the forest, facing new dangers. Each step marked growth and strength for every member of the group. Haruto clearly felt that he wasn't just learning from Tatsuya, Aiko, Kenji, and Emiko, but also learning how to work as a team and better understand his own copying ability. Remember, cooperation is the key, Tatsuya said as the group paused to rest. Because without each other, we won't be able to overcome these challenges. Haruto understood Tatsuya's words. He was no longer a lone warrior. He was part of this team, and it was the combination of each member that made them invincible. The group prepared to continue, stepping forward on a path leading to greater challenges, but Haruto felt a change within himself. He no longer feared. He was ready to face whatever came next. As Haruto's group continued their journey, the forest began to expand, and the landscape became stranger than ever. Gigantic ancient trees grew from the ground, towering high like monstrous figures. The light grew dimmer, obscured by the thick canopy, making the surrounding space feel gloomy and full of uncertainty. This place feels so strange, Aiko said, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. It feels like someone is watching us. Haruto also felt the tension in the air. He couldn't explain why, but the feeling of a mysterious presence around them made him uneasy. Maybe we're getting closer to our goal, Haruto said, trying to calm himself. Suddenly, from within the tree branches, a shadowy figure appeared. A strange woman stood there, dressed in unusual attire as if from another world. She had long silver hair, and her eyes, glowing like gems, reflected the light in the dark space. Where do you come from? Her voice echoed, though no sound could be heard. It was a gentle voice, but cold, as if it could pierce through the hearts of everyone. The group stood still, unsure of what to do. Tatsuya was the first to speak, his voice calm. We mean no harm. We're just people seeking power. The woman did not answer immediately, just stood there watching the group with cold eyes. After a brief silence, she walked toward them, moving gracefully as if not touching the ground. If that's the case, you will face a real challenge. A challenge? Kenji asked, his eyes never leaving the woman. Who are you? I am the spirit of the forest, the guardian of this place, she replied, her eyes seeming to pierce through the group's every movement. Only those with strength and wisdom can pass my trial. What trial? Haruto asked, unable to hide his curiosity. The spirit of the forest looked at Haruto, her eyes seeming to read his thoughts. Your questions are not easy to answer. But if you want to pass through this forest, you must overcome yourselves. I will not forgive those who do not truly understand their own strength. The group stood silent, sensing the tension in the air. Tatsuya glanced at the group and nodded. We will accept the challenge. As soon as the group agreed, the spirit of the forest waved her hand, and the space around them suddenly changed. The entire forest began to spin like a magical whirlwind. The ground beneath their feet started to crack, and a huge door emerged from the darkness, leading to another space. Only those who are truly strong can pass this trial, the spirit of the forest said, her voice echoing from everywhere. Face your inner fears and prove that you deserve to move forward. The door opened wide, and a blinding light pulled the group into a strange space. Everything seemed to disappear, leaving only the members of the group. Haruto found himself standing in another forest, but it was unlike any place he had been before. Shadowy figures flickered in the darkness, and every step he took brought a heavy, haunting sensation. He saw an image of himself, an image of Haruto, weak, defeated, unable to protect his loved ones. You are weak, a voice echoed from the darkness, causing Haruto to startle. You are nothing but a copy. You are just a shadow. Haruto looked at his reflection, feeling as if he were falling apart. No. That's not me, he told himself, but the feeling of weakness clung to his mind. Just as he was about to collapse, another image appeared before him, Aiko, Kenji, and Tatsuya. They all stood there, looking at him with encouraging eyes. You're not fighting alone, Tatsuya said, his eyes filled with trust. We are a team, Aiko added, smiling. Together, we will be strong, Kenji said, his voice full of certainty. Haruto suddenly felt a surge of strength within him. That's right. I'm not alone. We are a team, he thought and reached his hand out toward the light. Each image in the space began to fade, and the door leading to a new space opened wide. You have passed the trial. As the group stepped out of the strange space, they saw the spirit of the forest waiting for them, smiling as she looked at them. You have passed the trial, not with just strength, but with unity and trust in yourselves. It was a tough trial, Aiko sighed, but her voice was filled with satisfaction. We didn't just fight monsters, we fought ourselves. Indeed, Kenji said, his eyes thoughtful. We must understand our own strength, and not let fear control us. Haruto felt a strong sense within him. He had learned that true strength doesn't only come from the ability to fight or copy, but from the connection between team members and the trust in oneself. Thank you, Haruto said, his eyes shining. Thank you, everyone. After overcoming the challenge from the forest spirit, Haruto's group continued their journey through the strange forest, where ancient trees seemed to communicate with each other through the wind. Every step they took in this space made them feel the stark difference between this world and the one they once knew. Everything here was alive, but it was a strange and elusive kind of life. It feels like we're walking deeper into the heart of the forest, Aiko said, her voice carrying a hint of concern. Every step makes me feel like there's a presence watching us. Haruto nodded. Can you feel it too? I feel the same way. Something is waiting for us. That presence. Kenji said, his hand still gripping his sword tightly. Yes. No matter how strong we are, we can't defeat an entire world if we don't understand it. Tatsuya remained silent, his eyes focused ahead. We won't know anything until we face it. The only way is to move forward and discover. The group continued deeper into the forest, with strange noises coming from everywhere, making the atmosphere even more tense. As they passed through an unusually quiet area, a sudden strong wind blew through, carrying with it an echoing laughter from unseen places. The group stopped, on high alert. Why have you come here? A voice rang out from ahead, unclear as to where it came from. The group turned and saw a vague figure emerging from the darkness of the ancient trees. A strange creature, not entirely human in form, but with a distinct face full of malice. It had a towering body, silver skin that shimmered like metal, and sharp claws that were much longer than a normal person's. Who are you? Tatsuya spoke, his voice full of suspicion. I am the gatekeeper, the protector of the boundary between this world and the mysteries within, the strange creature replied, its red, bloodshot eyes glowing in the dark. You cannot proceed further unless you face me. Haruto could sense the danger from this creature. It was no ordinary monster. It could be a divine entity, or an ancient being born from the soul of the forest itself. You will have to fight if you wish to continue your journey, the gatekeeper said, chuckling softly. For a long time, only those with strength and wisdom have been able to pass. We won't give up, Haruto said, his voice resolute, his gaze no longer filled with hesitation. Together, we will fight. Kenji drew his sword. I'll cut off its escape. He charged toward the gatekeeper, his sword gleaming in his hand, aiming straight at the opponent. The gatekeeper swung a hand, dark magic enveloping the space. Its claws lashed out, creating an energy storm that pushed Kenji back. But Kenji didn't retreat, standing firm on his feet and continuing to charge, landing powerful strikes. Don't just fight with strength, fight with intellect. Tatsuya drew his own sword and stood beside Kenji, beginning to launch swift, strategic attacks. Remember, strength isn't always the deciding factor. Exactly. Aiko said, starting to cast wind magic. She created strong winds, weakening the gatekeeper's ability to attack. Haruto couldn't stay still. He focused on copying the skills of his teammates, combining them to create a new attack. Copy and paste came into play once again, but this time, he didn't just copy physical skills, he also copied the gatekeeper's dark magic. Haruto raised his hand and created a wind vortex combined with dark magical energy, pushing the gatekeeper back a step. The creature roared in anger, but became trapped in the magical whirlwind Haruto created. Finally, after an intense battle, the gatekeeper was defeated. The entity collapsed, the last traces of light fading into the air, leaving behind a strange silence. The group stood, panting, sweat beading on their faces. We did it, Aiko said, her voice trembling but full of pride. But that was just the beginning. Haruto looked at where the gatekeeper had fallen. That's right. We need to keep moving forward. This challenge wasn't just about fighting, Tatsuya said, his gaze serious. It's part of a long journey. What we've just experienced will make us stronger. And we won't stop until we reach our goal, Kenji said, his gaze sharp. Haruto's group continued walking, the dense forest around them still silent and mysterious. But now, they no longer feared the challenges ahead. Every step brought them closer to their goal. After defeating the gatekeeper, Haruto's group pressed deeper into the next area of the forest. The atmosphere became heavier, the trees growing taller and denser, blocking out sunlight, turning everything dark and obscure. It feels like we've entered another world, Aiko said, her eyes scanning the strange branches, as though she was looking for something. This isn't just an ordinary forest, Tatsuya remarked, his voice thoughtful. Something very powerful is present here. The space around them suddenly became eerily quiet. The group moved cautiously, ready for anything. Every step felt as though they were being watched, and every noise around them seemed amplified, making the atmosphere even tenser. Suddenly, a massive door appeared in front of them, standing in a clearing between the ancient trees. This door was completely different from any they had seen before. It wasn't made of wood or stone, but a strange structure made of magical threads, shimmering and emitting a faint light. Ancient symbols and carvings were etched on the door, making it look more like a dangerous trap than a gateway. "What is this?" Kenji asked, his eyes scrutinizing every detail of the door. "This door might be a portal to a new challenge," Tatsuya said, his gaze fixed on the symbols. "It's the only door leading to our goal. But we need to open it. How do we open it?" Emiko asked, her voice soft yet filled with concern. "This door seems very dangerous. We can't just walk through it." Haruto stepped forward, examining the door. He could feel a powerful magical force surrounding it, as if it was testing them from the very first glance. "This door might only open when we decipher it." "Decipher?" Aiko asked, seeming to think deeply about something. Haruto looked closely, trying to read the characters on the door. Suddenly, a line of characters lit up, "Seek the truth within yourself." These words appeared before him, causing him to pause and reflect. The truth within myself. Haruto wondered, feeling that these words weren't just a clue, but a challenge for each member of the group. Maybe we need to face ourselves before we open this door. Tatsuya looked at Haruto, his eyes showing a change. "This may not be easy. But if we don't overcome ourselves, this door will never open." As soon as Haruto finished speaking, the door slowly opened, a strange light emanating from within. Suddenly, each member of the group was sucked into a separate space, where they had to face their deepest fears and the worst truths about themselves. Haruto suddenly found himself standing in a dark room. Before him were images of his loved ones, those he had lost in the past. "You couldn't save them," a voice echoed from the darkness. "You can't change the past." Haruto felt his heart tighten. The painful memories of the past, the failure to protect those he loved, resurfaced in his mind. "I couldn't save them," he thought, feeling helplessness spread within him. But then, light appeared in the eyes of Tatsuya, Aiko, and Kenji, as if they were standing beside him, encouraging him to overcome the pain. "Don't let the past control you, Haruto," Tatsuya said from behind. "We can't change the past, but we can decide our future." Haruto took a deep breath, feeling a shift inside. "That's right. I won't let the fear of the past hold me back." And just as he overcame that inner challenge, the door fully opened, leading the group into a new space. The group entered the space beyond the door. An eerie and mysterious world appeared before them, like an ancient, abandoned city. Rusted buildings, sparkling rivers flowing through, and in the vast space, a tall tower stood, emitting strange magical light. "This is where we need to be," Tatsuya said, his eyes shining, but serious. "This door leads to the heart of the area we are searching for. But are there more challenges?" Emiko asked, the sense of worry still lingering. "There will be more challenges," Kenji replied, "but we've overcome many. I believe we can overcome any challenge." Haruto stood still for a moment, feeling the strength inside. He knew the journey was still long, but with the support of his companions, they could overcome any challenge. "Together, we will be stronger," Haruto said, his eyes glowing brightly. After overcoming the challenge posed by the forest spirit, Haruto's group continued their journey through the strange forest, where the ancient trees seemed to be conversing with each other in the wind. Each step in this space made them feel the distinct difference between the world they knew and the one before them. Everything here was alive, but with an eerie and elusive vitality. "It feels like we're moving deeper into the heart of the forest," Aiko said, her voice tinged with a hint of worry. Every step makes me feel like there's a presence watching us. Haruto nodded. Do you feel it? I sense the same. Something is waiting for us. That presence. Kenji said, still gripping his sword tightly. That's right. No matter how strong we are, we can't defeat an entire world if we don't understand it. Tatsuya remained silent, his eyes fixed ahead. We won't know until we face it. We just have to move forward and learn. The group continued walking deeper into the forest, with strange sounds echoing from all directions, making the atmosphere increasingly tense. As they passed through a particularly quiet area, a strong wind suddenly blew through, carrying with it an echoing laugh from an unseen source. The group stopped, on high alert. Why have you come here? A voice echoed from the front, its source unclear. The group turned around and saw a shadowy figure emerge from the darkness of the ancient trees. A strange creature, not fully human in form, but with a distinct face filled with cruelty in its gaze. It was tall, with shining silver skin that glistened like metal, and claws longer and sharper than those of a normal person. Who are you? Tatsuya spoke, his voice full of suspicion. I am the gatekeeper, the guardian of the boundary between this world and the mysteries within, the creature replied, its red eyes glowing in the darkness. You cannot proceed further without facing me. Haruto sensed the danger from this creature. It was not an ordinary monster. It could be a divine entity, or an ancient being born from the very soul of the forest. You will have to fight if you wish to continue, the gatekeeper said, chuckling softly. Only those who possess enough strength and wisdom can pass. We won't give up, Haruto said, his voice resolute, no longer filled with hesitation. Together, we will fight. Kenji drew his sword. I'll cut off its escape route. He charged toward the gatekeeper, his sword shining brightly, aimed directly at his opponent. The gatekeeper swung a hand, dark magic enveloping the space. Its claws lashed out, creating a storm of energy that pushed Kenji back. But Kenji did not retreat, standing firm on his feet, and continuing to attack with powerful strikes. Don't just fight with strength, fight with intelligence. Tatsuya drew his sword and stood beside Kenji, launching quick, but strategic attacks. Remember that strength is not always the deciding factor. That's right, Aiko said, beginning to cast wind magic. She created strong gusts that weakened the gatekeeper's offensive power. Haruto couldn't stand still. He focused on copying the skills of the group members, combining them into a new attack. Copy and paste worked once more, but this time, Haruto not only copied their physical skills, but also the gatekeeper's dark magic. Haruto raised his hand and created a whirlwind of wind combined with dark magical energy, pushing the gatekeeper back a step. The creature roared in anger, but became trapped in the magical vortex Haruto had created. Finally, after an intense battle, the gatekeeper was defeated. The entity collapsed, the last traces of light dissipating into the air, leaving behind an eerie silence. The group stood, catching their breath, sweat dotting their faces. We did it, Aiko said, her voice slightly trembling but filled with pride. But that was just the beginning. Haruto looked at where the gatekeeper had fallen. That's right. We must continue moving forward. This challenge is not just about fighting, Tatsuya said, his gaze serious. It is a part of the long journey. What we've just been through will make us stronger. And we won't stop until we achieve our goal, Kenji said, his gaze sharp. Haruto's group continued walking, the dense forest around them still silent and mysterious. But now, they no longer feared the next challenges. Each step was one step closer to their goal. After defeating the gatekeeper, Haruto's group moved deeper into the next area of the forest. The atmosphere grew thicker, the trees towering higher and denser, blocking out the sunlight, making everything darker and more obscure. It feels like we've entered another world, Aiko said, her eyes scanning the strange branches, as if looking for something. This isn't just an ordinary forest, Tatsuya remarked, his voice thoughtful. Something very powerful is present here. The space around them suddenly became eerily quiet. The group moved slowly, wary of any sudden movements. Each of their steps seemed to be watched, and every sound around them seemed amplified, adding to the growing tension. Suddenly, a huge door appeared before them, standing in the middle of a clearing among the ancient trees. This door was unlike any they had seen before. It wasn't made of wood or stone, but was an unusual structure made of magical threads, glowing and emitting a faint light. Ancient symbols and runes were etched into the door, making it appear more like a dangerous trap than a way forward. "What is this?" Kenji asked, his eyes carefully examining every detail of the door. "This door could be a gateway to another challenge," Tatsuya said, his eyes not leaving the symbols on the door. "It's the only door that leads to our goal. But we need to open it. How do we open it?" Emiko asked, her voice gentle but filled with concern. "This door seems very dangerous. We can't just walk through it." Haruto stepped forward, looking at the door. He felt a powerful magical force surrounding it, as if the door was challenging them from the very first glance. "This door may only open when we decode it." "Decode?" Aiko asked, seeming to think about something. Haruto looked more closely, trying to read the symbols on the door. Suddenly, a line of text lit up. "Only those who understand themselves can move forward." "Understand ourselves," Haruto murmured, feeling as though these words were reflecting his very thoughts. He began to feel that something much greater was waiting for him ahead. Perhaps this challenge isn't just about decoding the symbols, Tatsuya thought aloud, then turned to look at Haruto. "You are the one with the copying ability. Can you understand this?" Haruto took a deep breath, his eyes now filled with certainty. "We need to face ourselves once again." He moved toward the symbols, and in that moment, he felt a powerful surge of energy from deep within, as if he was confronting his deepest fears. "That's right," Haruto said, his eyes shining brightly. "This isn't just about magic or strength. This is about self-understanding. To decode this challenge, I must face myself." As soon as Haruto finished speaking, the walls of the room began to move, and a large image started to appear around them. Haruto saw himself, but not the current Haruto. This image was of a weak Haruto, unable to overcome challenges, unable to save those he loved. He saw himself standing and watching everything crumble, unable to do anything to change it. "You are just a weakling," a voice echoed from the darkness, "you can only copy others. But you don't have the strength to be strong on your own." Haruto felt his heart tighten. "No," he told himself, but the image kept playing, as if in an endless loop. "I'm not like that." This feeling was overpowering, as if he was being defeated by his own emotions. But just then, he saw Aiko, Kenji, and Tatsuya. They were standing there, their gazes not judgmental, but encouraging. "Haruto, you're not fighting alone anymore," Aiko said. "We're here to help you," Kenji added. "True strength comes from trusting yourself and those around you," Tatsuya said, his eyes deep and unwavering. "That's right," Haruto shouted, his heart suddenly filled with a new strength. He reached out his hand, and the symbols on the walls began to glow. He was no longer just copying, but the strength within him had become an infinite source of power. At that moment, the mysterious door in the room began to open, a blinding light shining from within. Haruto knew that he had passed this challenge not with strength or magic, but by accepting himself and understanding the value of unity. Haruto's group stepped through the open door, entering a new space. This was a vast area, with sparkling lights unlike any world they had seen before. Glowing stones covered the ground, like stars falling to earth. "Where are we?" Aiko asked, her eyes full of wonder. "We're getting closer to our goal," Tatsuya said, his voice calm, but full of encouragement. "This is where the secret we've been searching for is." Haruto looked into the space ahead of them. "This isn't just the path to power, it's also the path to understanding ourselves. And we will move forward together," Kenji said, his eyes shining with determination. The group continued forward, knowing that the journey was still long, but now they no longer feared the next challenges. When the ancient being opened the mystical portal, Haruto's group entered a vast and endless space, where everything was vague and limitless. The sky was a deep black, but it shimmered with twinkling lights, like distant stars in the universe. Gigantic stone pillars rose from the ground, surrounding them like a mysterious maze, and strange images passed by their vision, making this space feel truly terrifying. "This is not a material world," Tatsuya commented, his gaze sweeping over the stone pillars and the strange figures. "We are in a transition space, where everything can change in the blink of an eye." "But where is the final challenge?" Kenji asked, his voice sharp, betraying his unease. "It's right in front of us," Haruto said, his gaze fixed on a bright point gradually expanding at the center of the space. "We must be ready to face it." Suddenly, a colossal figure appeared, emitting a powerful burst of energy. It was a godlike entity, with a mysterious and powerful appearance, long hair flowing, eyes shining like stars, and skin shimmering silver like metal. This being said nothing, simply standing there, observing the group as if waiting for them to move forward. "Who are you?" Haruto asked, his voice full of doubt and fear. "I am the guardian of the Great Sea, the last protector of the secret," the being spoke, its voice resonating, as if coming from deep within space. "Do you seek knowledge? Do you seek power? Prove that you are worthy." "We have overcome all challenges," Tatsuya said, his voice strong, without any sign of fear. "We have faced the fears within ourselves. We are ready." The guardian of the Great Sea looked at them, its gaze full of understanding, but also sternness. "You wish to pass the final challenge. Very well. But you must pay the price. Only when you face death and accept it, can you move forward." As soon as the being finished speaking, the space around the group suddenly changed. The ground beneath their feet began to crack open, forming dark cracks from which enormous creatures emerged. These creatures resembled mythical monsters, but possessed an incredibly destructive power. "Be careful!" Aiko shouted, drawing her magical sword and rushing to face one of the massive monsters. "We have to fight." "Don't just fight with strength," Tatsuya said, his voice calm. "Death is not the enemy. We must fight with ourselves." The group plunged into an unrelenting battle, fighting monsters that seemed unbeatable. Kenji swung his large sword, Emiko cast powerful water spells, Aiko used wind magic to create attacking waves, while Haruto kept copying everyone's skills, combining them into powerful strikes. But with every attack, Haruto felt a change within himself. What is death? What is true death? He wondered. Each time an attack hit its target, he felt as if a part of him was dying. But after each instance, he stood up, stronger, as if death was part of a rebirth. Life is not eternal, Haruto told himself, but death is what helps us understand life better. Suddenly, the magical storm from the creatures around them ceased, and the entire space went silent. The guardian of the Great Sea reappeared, looking at Haruto and the group. "You have understood. Death is rebirth, the path to true power. We have passed this challenge," Haruto said, his voice confident. "We have faced death and accepted it, not to fear, but to understand our true strength." The gate ahead suddenly opened, and Haruto's group entered a new space. Light illuminated everywhere, a completely different world, full of colors and life. Enormous petals floated in the air, and floating mountains formed a miraculous, beautiful scene like nothing they had seen before. "Where are we?" Emiko asked, her eyes filled with amazement. "This is the place of rebirth, where beings can reclaim their strength and purpose," Tatsuya explained, his eyes glowing with profound understanding. "This place is the end and the beginning of everything," Kenji said, his voice deep and full of respect. "So, we've found the secret," Haruto smiled, his eyes sparkling. "Death is not the end. It is part of the rebirth. And it is this rebirth that leads us to true power. And this is also the path to the next challenges," Tatsuya said, his voice full of determination. "We can't stop. We will continue moving forward." As they entered the place of rebirth, a space full of light and miraculous colors. The group felt as though they were filled with a new vitality. Huge flowers floated in the air, and rivers of light wound through soft hills. The air was fresh, as if there were no darkness or danger here. This is really different, Aiko said, her eyes bright, amazed by the strange beauty of the place. This place seems like a perfect world. Yes, Tatsuya nodded. But don't let appearances distract you. Everything here has its reason. There are many secrets hidden in this world. Haruto stepped onto a small path, leading deeper into the place of rebirth. The strange feeling still didn't leave him. Though this place was beautiful, Haruto sensed that this world had its own purpose, one they hadn't fully understood yet. We must continue exploring, Haruto said, his eyes determined. We must understand our purpose here. The group followed the path, and then they came to a large stone formation, where ancient characters appeared on the surface of the stone. We're facing another puzzle, Kenji said, unsurprised. Tatsuya carefully observed. These characters seem to be asking us to decipher something. But this time, it's not about life or death. Haruto looked closely at the characters, and then he realized. It's about change. About transformation. Transformation? Emiko asked, seeming not to fully understand. Yes. It's about how we change ourselves through each challenge, and how we can become a stronger version of ourselves, Haruto explained. As soon as Haruto finished speaking, a powerful burst of energy emanated from the characters, forming a new door. The group looked at each other, then stepped forward. The door opened, revealing another miraculous space, where everything seemed to be made of light and white clouds. When the group entered the new space, a giant being appeared before them. It was not the guardian of the great sea from before, but an entity much larger. This being had the form of a light dragon, with massive wings radiating brilliant light. Its eyes emitted sparkling light, as if it could see through all the secrets of the universe. You have arrived, the being's voice echoed through the space, but will you be able to understand what I will teach you? Who are you? Haruto asked, his eyes steady, unafraid of the being's grandeur. I am the guardian of the cosmic gate, the being answered, its voice full of solemnity. I am the protector of the change and rebirth of all worlds. You have come at the right moment. This is where you will learn what no one else can understand. We have passed many challenges, Tatsuya spoke, his eyes unwavering. We wish to learn the secrets you protect. Only when you understand the true power of change and sacrifice will you be able to uncover this secret, the guardian said. You must face the final challenge. Accept the transformation of yourselves. As soon as the being finished speaking, a strong wind blew, and the group was swept into a different space. This time, the space around them completely transformed, where memories and images from the past appeared in the space. Haruto saw images of himself in the past, when he was a weak warrior, always afraid and unable to protect those he loved. I failed, Haruto thought, feeling immense pain rising in his chest. Don't let the past control you. A voice echoed from behind, the death of loved ones is not the end. You can learn from that failure and become stronger. Haruto turned around, seeing Tatsuya, Aiko, Kenji, and Emiko standing there. Their gazes were not judgmental, but encouraging. They looked at him not just as companions, but with deep understanding. You are not alone, Haruto, Aiko smiled, her voice gentle. We will overcome this challenge together. Haruto looked at the images from the past, then turned to look at his friends. I will not let the past control me anymore. I have changed. As soon as he said this, the images in the space disappeared, and the door ahead opened, leading them to a new space full of light. The door opened, leading the group into another space, where space and time blended, creating a miraculous scene. They felt a deep transformation within themselves, as if they had crossed a personal threshold. We did it, Emiko said, her voice full of pride. This is true rebirth. Tatsuya nodded, his eyes shining as he looked ahead. Yes. Change doesn't just come from facing external challenges, but also from changing ourselves. And only change can lead us to true power, Kenji said, his voice full of understanding. Haruto stood silently for a moment, feeling the change within himself. He was no longer a weak warrior. We've overcome everything, Haruto smiled, his eyes shining. But our journey is still long. After passing through the door of rebirth, Haruto's group stepped into a vast new space, where before them stood an ancient tower, towering and mysterious in the light of magic. The moss-covered stone walls, marked by the traces of time, seemed to hold countless stories from thousands of years ago. The classic stairs led upward, but there was no light to illuminate the path. This is where we must go, Tatsuya said, his eyes filled with determination. This tower holds ancient secrets. But I feel like our biggest challenge lies within. Haruto felt his heart race as he looked at the tower. He could sense its majesty, as if everything in this world was governed by it. The closer they got, the more it felt as if they were stepping into a place not meant for humans, but for ancient beings of great power. What will we have to face inside? Emiko asked, her voice tinged with worry. Even though they had faced many challenges, this feeling was different. I can feel something very powerful. Me too, Aiko said, her eyes sharp, but filled with doubt. We can't let fear control us. The group nodded in unison, and they began to move towards the tower. As they passed through the large stone gate, Haruto's group was pulled into a completely different space. This massive room had a ceiling so high it seemed endless. The surrounding walls were adorned with ancient magical symbols and unreadable inscriptions, reflecting the flickering light from strange stones, creating an atmosphere that was both mysterious and threatening. I can't understand this, Tatsuya said as he looked at the characters on the wall. It seems like we can't open the path ahead unless we decode these characters. It looks like we have another intellectual challenge, Kenji said, his voice calm. We need to figure out how to decipher this. Haruto looked closely at the characters, sensing a strange energy from them. Suddenly, a line of text lit up. Only those who understand themselves can move forward. Understand yourself. Haruto murmured, feeling as if these words were reflecting his own thoughts. He began to feel that something much bigger was waiting for him ahead. Perhaps this challenge isn't just about decoding the characters, Tatsuya thought, then turned to Haruto. You have the ability to copy. Can you understand this? Haruto took a deep breath, his gaze no longer doubtful. We need to face ourselves once more. He approached the characters, and in that moment, he felt a powerful energy from within his soul, as if he was facing his deepest fears. Yes, Haruto said, his eyes blazing. This isn't just about magic or power. It's about self-awareness. To solve this challenge, I must face myself. As soon as Haruto finished speaking, the walls in the room began to move, and a large image began to appear in the space around them. Haruto saw himself, but not as the Haruto he was now. This image was a weak Haruto, unable to overcome challenges, unable to save the people he loved. He saw himself standing and watching everything fall apart, unable to change anything. You are nothing but weak, a voice echoed from the darkness, you can only copy others. But you lack the ability to be strong on your own. Haruto felt his heart tighten. No. He told himself, but the image kept playing, as if it were an endless loop. I am not like that. This feeling was incredibly strong, as if he was being defeated by his own emotions. But in that moment, he saw Aiko, Kenji, and Tatsuya. They stood there, their eyes not filled with judgment but encouragement. Haruto, you're not fighting alone anymore. Aiko said. We're here to help you. Kenji added. True strength comes from trusting yourself and those around you. Tatsuya said, his eyes deep and determined. Yes. Haruto shouted, his heart suddenly filling with new strength. He raised his hand, and the characters on the wall began to glow. He no longer just copied, but his own strength became an endless source of power. At the same time, the mysterious door in the room began to open, and blinding light poured out from within. Haruto knew that he had overcome this challenge, not through power or magic, but by accepting himself and understanding the value of unity. Haruto's group stepped through the open door into a new space. This was a vast area, filled with sparkling lights, unlike any world they had ever seen. The glowing stones covered the ground, resembling fallen stars scattered across this world. "Where are we?" Aiko exclaimed, amazed by the beauty and majesty of the city. "This place feels like another world, beyond everything we imagined." Tatsuya observed carefully, and a sense of mystery and danger began to show in his eyes. "We don't know everything about this place. The deeper secrets have yet to be revealed." Haruto felt his heart beat stronger. This isn't just a city. This is the origin of everything. It holds great secrets, what we must face to reach the final goal. The group continued into the city, where massive stone pillars, divine statues, and strange architecture formed a space that was both beautiful and eerie. As they moved deeper, a giant door appeared before them, shining brightly like a gateway to the outside world. Suddenly, a voice echoed from behind them, as if it were everywhere in this space. "You've come here for a reason. But do you have the strength to uncover these deep secrets?" "Who's speaking?" Haruto turned around, looking around. "I am the great guardian of this kingdom," the voice continued, echoing in the space. "You have passed many challenges, but that is only a small part compared to the final challenge you must face." Soon after, a giant figure appeared from afar. The great guardian stood before them, with a towering figure, large wings spreading wide, and eyes glowing with terrifying power. This being looked like an ancient warrior, wearing shining armor and holding a massive weapon. "Who are you?" Tatsuya asked, his eyes never leaving the guardian. "I am the guardian of secrets and rebirth," the guardian replied, their voice booming like thunder. "You seek power and understanding, but are you ready to pay the price?" "We have passed many challenges," Haruto said, his eyes full of determination. "We will not back down. We are ready to face the final challenge." "Then you must understand that true sacrifice is not about what you can give, but about letting go of yourself and your ego to achieve a higher goal," the guardians said, their eyes glowing with a cold light. "Sacrifice?" Aiko murmured, her eyes filled with doubt. "What must we give up to achieve that?" "Your ego, your weak emotions, and your fear," the guardian continued. "Only when you let go of these can you truly achieve great power. This is not an easy task." Haruto felt a deep urge within himself, as if a part of him was calling for sacrifice. He was no longer the weak warrior he once was. He had learned that true strength comes from painful decisions and accepting the things we cannot control. "I am ready to give up myself if necessary," Haruto said, his voice firm. "I can't let my ego control my actions anymore." Tatsuya and the other members stood by his side, their eyes filled with support. "We will do this together," Tatsuya said, his voice unwavering. "Yes," Aiko added, "we will overcome this challenge together." "Then you have understood the value of sacrifice," the guardians said, their eyes softening. "Pass through this challenge, and you will no longer be yourselves. You will become true warriors." As the guardians' words ended, the entire space began to shake, and a ring of light surrounded the group. "Enter this challenge," the guardian said, and the ring of light gradually narrowed, enclosing Haruto's group in another space. The group was pulled into another space, where time and space seemed to no longer exist. They found themselves standing in an endless sea, with no shore or boundaries. Only the sky and the vast sea surrounded them. "What is this challenge?" Emiko asked, her voice soft, but full of apprehension. "This is where you must face yourselves once again," the guardians said, their voice echoing throughout the space. "You must confront your deepest fears." Suddenly, Haruto found himself facing a figure, a version of himself, but different. This version was weak, fearful, unable to protect anyone. This figure stood opposite Haruto, its eyes filled with contempt. "You cannot win. You are weak." The version of Haruto said, its voice cold. Haruto felt the pain from within, but he did not back down. I will not let myself be defeated. I have changed, he said, his voice steadier and more determined than ever before. You can defeat your fear, but you must let go of what has been holding you back. After overcoming the trials of sacrifice and awakening, Haruto's group felt they had reached a new level of strength. However, even though they had gained valuable lessons, every step they took brought them into greater challenges, where not only strength, but also courage and wisdom would determine their future. Although we've overcome many trials, Tatsuya said as the group continued their journey, his gaze focused ahead. But it feels like the most important thing has yet to happen. The deep secrets we are seeking have not yet been revealed. Haruto nodded, feeling the truth in Tatsuya's words. That's right. We still don't fully understand this world. Everything is still so vague. The space around them gradually became unfamiliar and dark. Clouds swirled in the sky, the massive, moss-covered stone pillars, and the rivers of light appeared to be flowing backward, creating a tense and dangerous atmosphere. All they could feel was the instability of the space, as if the world was slowly deteriorating. We must move forward, Kenji said, his eyes full of determination. There is no turning back. If we want to complete this journey, we must face the highest beings. After a while of walking, the group stopped in front of a massive door, etched with ancient characters, glowing with a mysterious aura. This door, like the previous challenges, seemed not only to be a physical barrier, but also a symbol of a new beginning, a gateway to another world they had yet to discover. Another door, Aiko said, her voice soft but betraying her worry. Every time we stand before a door, we feel something is off. And this time, it's certainly no exception, Tatsuya said, his voice calm, but full of vigilance. This door may not just be a challenge, but a curse. Haruto approached the door, feeling an invisible wave of energy emanating from it. A curse, he asked, his eyes sharp. So, what do we have to face? Let's see. Tatsuya said, stepping closer to the door, then placing his hand on its surface. Immediately, the ancient characters lit up, and a voice echoed from within. Those who enter my world, remember this curse. Only when you abandon your purpose and let everything pass, can you pass through this door. The group stood still, none of them daring to move immediately. Abandon our purpose. Emiko repeated, her face filled with confusion. Impossible. That's why we came here. So what do we do? Haruto asked, his voice unwavering. He felt a deep inner turmoil hearing the curse. Perhaps we don't have to abandon our entire purpose, Tatsuya said, his voice thoughtful. But maybe we have to let go of the things that are hindering us from moving forward. Another trial, Kenji said, his hand tightening around his sword. We must learn to let go of the unnecessary. As soon as Kenji's last words rang out, the door slowly began to open, and Haruto's group stepped into a completely different space. The surrounding environment was a desolate land, with ruins and broken walls scattered everywhere. But what made the group most fearful was the emptiness in the air. In this space, they found themselves standing before a gloomy swamp, where strange creatures rose from the depths. A voice echoed from afar, as if coming from the very space itself. Face the truth about yourselves. Only when you pass the final trial can you achieve what you desire. Haruto felt a strange sensation rise in his chest. The truth about ourselves, he wondered, but just then, an image appeared in his mind, a weak Haruto, unable to protect those he loved, always feeling fearful and not strong enough. What's happening? Emiko asked, her face clearly confused. We have to face our true fears, Tatsuya said, his gaze sharp. This isn't a trial of strength, but of the soul. Exactly, Haruto said, his voice steady. Each of us has to let go of the fear within us. Each step in the swamp, every member of the group had to confront painful memories and painful truths, images of past failures, things they once feared, and didn't want to face. But with each confrontation with the truth, they became stronger, learning to let go of negative emotions to move forward. Haruto realized that this was the final trial, where not only did he have to face external fears, but also those deep fears within himself. He couldn't continue his journey without understanding himself. Finally, after overcoming all their fears, Haruto's group achieved enlightenment. The final door opened, revealing a beautiful scene before them. Brilliant light, a clear sky with no clouds, an air so fresh, as if it were a perfect world. "We did it," Aiko said, her voice gentle but full of contentment. "We have passed the final trial." "That's right," Tatsuya said, his eyes glowing with a glimmer of hope. "We have grown, not just in strength, but in spirit." Haruto stood there, feeling the transformation within him. "Yes, we've overcome ourselves." He smiled, looking toward the future. "We will not stop. This entire journey is just beginning." When Haruto's group stepped through the final door, they did not expect that everything was just beginning. The space before them was no longer the clean and beautiful world they had just encountered. Instead, they found themselves standing in a dark space, full of thunder and magical storms. Fierce winds blew, sweeping brilliant flashes of light through the air, and the sky turned gloomy with dark clouds gathering. "What's happening?" Aiko asked, her voice echoing in the heavy air, full of worry. "We just passed the trial. Why is everything suddenly changing?" Haruto looked around, sensing the stark change in the space. It felt as though everything had been overturned, and the safety they just experienced was no longer there. "Maybe, we haven't passed the final trial yet," Haruto said, his eyes carefully observing the strange flashes and energy emanating from around them. "These trials aren't simple. We still don't fully understand this world." Tatsuya answered, his voice thoughtful, showing no surprise. As soon as Tatsuya's words ended, giant magical pillars rose from the ground, stretching high into the sky like sacred spears, emitting sharp light streaks. The magical pillars began to spin, creating energy waves that Haruto's group had to face. A giant entity appeared, its eyes shining like stars, its form majestic, like an invisible being in the world of magic. "Why have you come here?" The voice of the giant entity echoed through the space. "Do you dare face this storm?" Haruto felt an unusual fear, but he couldn't let it dominate him. "We came here to understand this world, to uncover the secrets and the power it holds," he replied, his voice firm. "Then you must face a trial that even the highest beings fear," the giant entity said, its voice echoing like thunder. "You must survive the magical storm, and this will determine if you are worthy to step into this world." Suddenly, the magical storm began to emerge from the stone pillars around them, creating powerful energy waves, sweeping everything in its path. The entire group had to fight to stay alive amidst this storm. These waves of energy didn't just attack them, but tested each of their spirits. "Be careful!" Tatsuya shouted, swinging his sword to block the powerful energy wave. "We can't face everything at once. We need to find a way to overcome it. Focus!" Haruto yelled, "We must combine our strength to survive this storm." The group began to use their powers in unison. Kenji swung his sword through the energy waves. Aiko controlled wind magic to reduce the strength of the storm, while Emiko cast water magic to calm the violent waves. Haruto stood in the middle, copying the skills of the group members, combining them to create powerful attacks and protect his friends. Each member of the group had to fight not only the magical storm, but also the fear within themselves. Haruto felt a strong sensation rise within him, as if he was learning to conquer himself once again. "This storm is not just a trial of strength," Haruto said as they fought. "It's a test of our determination and willpower. We must keep moving forward." The group continued to fight, each step overcoming the powerful magical waves. The storm not only tested their strength, but also tested their resilience and unity. Finally, after tense moments, the magical storm gradually subsided, and the space became still. When the magical storm ceased, Haruto's group realized that they hadn't just overcome a trial, they had grown more than ever. The magical pillars began to glow, creating an open door leading to another space, full of light and mystery. We've passed, Aiko said, her voice filled with relief. The storm wasn't just a trial of strength, but a way for us to learn determination. That's right, Tatsuya said, looking toward the open door. This is the biggest step in our journey. We haven't just fought magic, we've fought ourselves. We won't stop. Haruto smiled, his eyes shining. Now it's time to move forward, to uncover the final secrets. That's right, Kenji said, his hand gripping his sword tightly. Together, we will not stop until we achieve our goal. When Haruto's group stepped through the open gate, they no longer saw the massive stone pillars or magical rivers. Instead, they stood on a barren land, where there was no light, no sound. Everything around them seemed like an undefined space, with no sky or ground. The only thing in sight was a gigantic gate rising in the middle of the empty space, resembling the gateway to another universe. Where are we? Aiko asked, her voice echoing in the silence. This place doesn't seem to be a part of our world anymore. This space, it's like a door between worlds, Tatsuya commented, his voice thoughtful. Perhaps this is a place outside the time and space that we know. Haruto felt a strange sensation in his heart as he gazed at the enormous gate. The light emanating from it seemed to draw all of the universe in. We need to go through that, Haruto said, his voice determined. This might be where we uncover the final secrets. The group walked toward the gate, and as they approached, the gate began to open, revealing a strange space where nothing seemed to follow any rules. As they stepped through the gate, Haruto's group couldn't believe their eyes. The space before them was not a physical world but an illusory one, where time and space no longer existed as they knew it. They stood in the middle of a starry universe, with more gates opening before them. Is this the world outside time? Emiko asked, her voice full of surprise and doubt. Where are we? It seems like we've entered a hyper-universe, where everything can change, Tatsuya remarked, his eyes filled with caution. This place doesn't follow the usual laws of the world we know. At that moment, a giant figure appeared in the distance. It was a magnificent being of light, with bright eyes, as if the entire universe existed within it. Why have you come here? The voice of the entity echoed throughout the space. This is where the secrets of the universe exist, but also the place where you will face the truth about yourselves. We came here to uncover the secrets contained within this universe, Haruto replied, his voice steady. We've passed many trials and are ready to face anything. The secrets of this universe are not for the weak, the entity said, its gaze full of severity. Do you have the strength to endure it? As the entity's voice echoed, a powerful wave of energy began to engulf the group. These energy waves not only challenged their strength, but also tested their mental fortitude and ability to control themselves. Each wave was like a lesson the universe wanted them to overcome. Be careful! Tatsuya shouted, swinging his sword to block the energy wave. This is not a normal battle. We need to understand its true purpose. Haruto quickly realized that this was not a battle they could win with mere strength. He felt that mental strength and self-control were the most important elements in this challenge. We need to use everything we've learned, Haruto said, his voice firm. It's not about fighting it, but understanding it and controlling its power. Exactly, Kenji agreed, his eyes sharp. This wave can only be overcome if we don't get swept away by it. The group began to cast coordinated magic, using their individual powers to create protective shields, while working together to separate the energy waves, forming a solid structure that couldn't be broken. We're not fighting this universe, Haruto said, his eyes shining. We need to learn to merge with it. Each energy wave gradually weakened and eventually, when all the challenges were overcome, the space before the group slowly brightened, revealing a massive gate opening. As the gate opened, a brilliant light blazed from within, creating a new space. In this space, Haruto's group felt an immense, unfamiliar energy, one they had never experienced before. Stars and glowing orbs floated in the space, forming a completely new universe. We've made it here. Aiko said, her voice filled with amazement and respect. "This is where we'll find the power we've been searching for." "That's right," Tatsuya said, his eyes still focused on the space ahead. "We've faced countless trials, but this place will be the final test." Haruto stepped forward, feeling the awakening within himself. "We haven't stopped moving forward, not just for strength, but for an understanding of ourselves." He looked at the glittering stars in the space. "We won't stop." "No, we can't stop," Kenji said, his eyes resolute. "This journey is far from over, and our goal won't be complete until we understand everything." The group continued into the radiant space, knowing that before them lay secrets yet to be uncovered, and difficult trials still awaited them. When Haruto's group entered the radiant space, they didn't realize that they had crossed the boundary of reality, stepping into a realm that existed beyond normal time and space. The universe before them had no sky, no ground, just the eternal stars shining on an endless dark backdrop. The group stood within this space, feeling a miraculous and superior magical power. Every step they took seemed to no longer depend on time or space, as if they were crossing dimensions to explore uncharted territories. "What is this place?" Aiko asked, her eyes wide with amazement, though tinged with skepticism. "Where are we? And why does this feeling feel so overwhelming? We've passed so many trials, but this place, it feels like a starting point for everything," Tatsuya said, his eyes still focused on the surrounding space. "There's something very different here. This isn't by chance." Haruto stayed silent, but the feeling inside him was crystal clear. This isn't just a physical space. This is a place where everything exists simultaneously, every event, every parallel world, they all merge together here. He spoke, his voice deep and filled with resolve. At that moment, a procession of light appeared from afar, leading the way for the group. Gigantic light beings began to approach them. These beings were not ordinary creatures, but supreme entities, beings that existed on the edge of the universe, creatures humanity had never encountered before. "We're standing before beings with power far beyond ours," Haruto thought, but he wasn't afraid. On the contrary, he felt a strong drive. "We're not just facing these entities. We need to understand their essence, to move forward." As the light procession drew closer, one entity appeared among them. This being was shaped like a colossal wave of light, its eyes glowing like stars, and its armor was made of shimmering light. It was the protector of the universe, the supreme entity said to have once governed this universe long ago. "You've come this far, but do you have the strength to continue this journey?" The protector's voice resonated, as if piercing through every cell of the group's members. "We're ready," Tatsuya replied, his voice firm, his eyes unwavering. "We've overcome many trials, and we won't stop now." "Then you must understand one thing," the protector continued, its eyes shining with limitless power. "Only when you understand yourselves and transcend your personal existence, will you be able to wield this supreme power." Haruto felt a tremendous jolt within himself. Transcend personal existence, he wondered, but something inside him had changed. Maybe this is the key we need to understand. The protector reached out, and a massive space gate opened, revealing a universe full of light, where beings and worlds moved in a constant cycle that could not be stopped. "This is where everything merges," the protector explained, "every star, every planet, every being exists in an eternal cycle. You must learn to harmonize with all of it in order to pass through." As the space gate opened, a giant wave of light surged, enveloping Haruto's group in a powerful flow of energy. It felt as if all time, space, and beings existed simultaneously. This universe no longer had divisions, everything merged, as if every moment was a part of the whole. "What should we do?" Aiko asked, her voice echoing in the chaotic space. "Together!" Haruto shouted, his voice filled with determination. "We need to unite, understand everything, and continue forward." The group focused on each other, each using their own powers, but not separately, rather in perfect unity, like the core of a universe. Haruto felt the supreme power from within himself. It was not just the power of magic, but the connection to the universe, the understanding of its essence. We're not individual beings. Haruto said, we are part of this whole. We are the universe. As they fully united, the wave of light surrounding them dissipated, leaving behind a silent and mysterious space. As the surrounding space gradually stabilized, a massive glowing curtain appeared, drawing in light from all worlds, all universes in the cosmos. This was a monumental discovery, a world that Haruto's group had only just begun to understand. The universe wasn't just a place of matter, but a living entity, where every being was connected. We've attained supreme power, Tatsuya said, his voice full of pride. But we also understand that this power isn't just for fighting, it's for understanding and protecting life. This power will help us change this world, Emiko said, her eyes full of resolve. We will never retreat again. Haruto smiled, feeling the perfect harmony between them and this universe. That's right. This is just the first step. Our journey is far from over, but now, we can face any challenge. After passing through the wave of light and discovering their connection to the universe, Haruto's group felt as if they had taken one step closer to their ultimate goal in their journey. However, strange feelings and unusual signs still lingered around them. The space around them was no longer a vast, bright universe, but had become blurred, sometimes bright and sometimes dark, as if being sucked into a black hole of space. This feeling, it's not right, Haruto said, his eyes scanning everything around him. We've entered a different area of the universe. But it doesn't feel like anything we've seen before. Yes, Tatsuya replied, his eyes observing the massive stone pillars floating in the space. This place has a different energy. Something is wrong. Look. Aiko pointed in the distance, where a brilliant circle of light began to appear, forming a huge gap in space. It's a portal, Kenji remarked, though there was a hint of suspicion in his voice. This could be our final challenge. Or the end of everything. This is the moment we decide, Haruto said, his voice resolute. We must go into understand, or live forever in this ambiguity. The group stepped into the circle of light, and immediately, a strange feeling enveloped them. The space around them seemed to compress, and a powerful energy surrounded them. Strange images, past and present events, seemed to blend together, creating a cosmic timeline. When they stepped through the portal, they found themselves in the middle of another universe, one where there were no clearly defined worlds. Everything around them appeared shattered, planets and stars were being destroyed piece by piece, forming invisible cracks in space. What's happening? Emiko asked, her voice lost in the chaotic space. Is this the world of destruction? Not just destruction, Tatsuya said, his voice filled with understanding. This is the end. A cosmic cycle is nearing its conclusion. A cosmic cycle. Aiko repeated, her eyes confused. Is this the curse we must face? Maybe, Haruto said, his gaze not leaving the space around them. We are no longer just seeking power. We are searching for the truth about this universe, about the cycle of life and death it must go through. Suddenly, a giant entity appeared at the center of space. This being took the form of a cosmic god, with glowing eyes, massive arms extending from the darkness, and a blazing light enveloping its body. We've been waiting for you, the voice of the entity echoed, as if passing through space and time. You are the intruders in this cosmic cycle. You seek the truth, but do you have the strength to face it? We are ready, Haruto replied, his eyes filled with determination. We have overcome many challenges, and we cannot stop now. Then, face the truth you seek, the cosmic entity said, its eyes flashing with a cold light. Destruction is not the end, but rebirth. What you see is only the shadow of the past universe, a part of an inevitable cycle. But this cycle will end, Haruto said, his eyes glowing. If nothing changes, it will only continue to repeat. And we won't let that happen. The cosmic entity smiled, but it was not a smile of satisfaction, but one of deep understanding of destruction and rebirth. You don't understand, the entity said, its voice tinged with sadness and coldness. Every cosmic cycle involves destruction. But rebirth only comes after complete destruction, and you cannot change that law. But we can do it differently, Haruto said, his voice unshaken. We can create change, even if it goes against the old laws. Tatsuya, Aiko, Kenji, and Emiko stood beside Haruto, their eyes glowing with determination. We cannot stand still, Tatsuya said, his voice deep and resolute. We must create change. That is why we are here. So you want to break the cycle? The cosmic entity asked, its gaze becoming cold, as if testing the group's resolve. Not break the cycle, Haruto said, his voice calm but certain. We want to harmonize with it. We are not intruders, we are part of this universe itself. And together, we will change it. Then you are ready to face the final challenge, the cosmic entity said, its eyes flashing like lightning. You will face the destruction you seek. And only after overcoming that will you truly understand rebirth. At the entity's words, a massive wave of energy erupted, engulfing Haruto's group. The space around them turned into a swirling black storm, with images of destruction flashing continuously, as if worlds were being destroyed in an instant. We cannot be afraid. Haruto shouted, his determination stronger than ever. This is the final challenge. We will overcome it. The group focused, using their power to fight against the energy storm, but instead of just battling it, they began to merge with the energy, accepting destruction as part of rebirth. We don't just defeat it, we must understand and control it, Haruto said, his voice echoing through the chaotic space. This universe is not our enemy. We are the ones creating the change. As the energy storm gradually subsided, the group realized they had understood the new law of the universe. Destruction was not the end, but part of the eternal cycle of rebirth. After the confrontation with the cosmic entity ended, the space around Haruto's group had completely changed. No more energy storms, no more painful images of destruction, everything around them gradually stabilized, and they could feel a perfect harmony between themselves and the universe. We did it, Tatsuya said, his voice gentle but full of pride. Change is not the victory of power, but of integration. Haruto looked around the space, a universe no longer chaotic, but now peaceful. We didn't just fight external challenges, he said, his voice contemplative. We fought ourselves. We have understood the necessary change to achieve rebirth. Exactly, Emiko said, her eyes glowing with satisfaction and understanding. We cannot stand still. Change is an indispensable part of this journey. We've changed, Kenji said, his eyes fixed on the universe ahead. But the most important thing is that we can help change this world. Haruto's group stood still in space, feeling not only connected with each other, but with the entire universe, as if they were becoming part of the whole, beings within this universe. The universe is not just a place for inanimate objects, Haruto said. It is a living entity, where every action we take has an impact. As soon as he finished speaking, a brilliant portal opened before them. It was not just any portal like before, but a grand one, shining like a miniature universe. Step through this portal, a voice echoed, but this time it was not the voice of the cosmic entity, but the voice of the universe itself. You have achieved integration. It is time for you to step into a new phase. The group stepped through the portal, and a completely new space opened before them. No longer a chaotic universe or a destroyed place, the space before them was a new world, where stars were no longer twinkling, but instead vibrant planets, and great creatures moved freely, creating a developing universe. Where are we? Aiko exclaimed, her eyes wide in amazement. It feels like we're in an unexplored universe, a world full of life. We didn't just find change within ourselves, Tatsuya said, his voice full of understanding. We have entered a new phase. A phase where our power can create real change. Haruto looked toward the distance, where cosmic beings were communicating, new planets were forming, and stars were beginning to shine. We've changed and understood more about ourselves, he said, his voice calm, but full of confidence. This is the path we must take. Not just to protect the universe, but to create the change we've been searching for. The group continued walking into the new space, and they began to explore the secrets that this universe contained. Colorful planets, strange life forms, and unexplored regions of space appeared before them. The wonders they once thought were only in legends now unfolded before their eyes as if the universe was opening up, layer by layer. This universe is not immutable, Emiko said, her eyes shining. It is changing every day, every hour, and all of us are part of that change. This means, Kenji said, his voice strangely, we are not just exploring the universe, but creating a new world. We can change everything, Haruto said, his eyes sparkling. And we will not let everything fall into chaos again. As Haruto's group continued their journey, they not only explored the universe, but also faced new challenges, strange planets, powerful entities, and unanswered questions about the universe, time, and the nature of life. Although they had overcome many challenges, Haruto's group knew that this journey was far from over. They were no longer just warriors seeking power. Now, they were the ones who could create change, not just in this universe, but in the world they once knew. We are the ones who will change the fate of this universe, Haruto said, his voice resolute yet filled with hope. We are ready to make that happen. And we will not stop. Tatsuya, Aiko, Kenji, and Emiko nodded in agreement. We will change this world, Tatsuya said, his voice full of determination. We will guide the universe into a new era. And so, they continued down the challenging path ahead, with strong hearts and hopeful eyes, exploring and creating a new world where everything could change.